Good afternoon, welcome back to Robbo's Reviews. This is the video that I was planning to do for the Dell optiplex Hackintosh 7020. So originally I was going to do this as a series, but I've decided to do it as one 20-minute-ish video. Hopefully it will give you a guide and get you up and running if you've got a similar machine to this. Any questions or comments, please leave them after the video. If you like what you see, please subscribe. If you want to see anything different, please let me know, and enjoy. Thanks. First thing you'll need to do a Hackintosh is a computer, and these days you can pretty much use any Intel based machine to complete the Hackintosh. There's loads and loads of information on the internet as to what you need, but I would always stick to an Intel machine. Can be done on the AMD chipset, but it's a bit more work from my understanding. I've never done it because I've always had Intel. There are guides on doing it on AMD, but personally stick to Intel. More available, probably find it cheaper. So you can go with any number of things. So I've got hacks varying from an i7 4790K, an i7 920. The one that I've just done is an i5 4590. That is a Z87 chipset, 97 chipset, Z97 chipset, which wasn't natively used by Apple. They used the previous generation and the generation after that. So they used, I think it's I can't remember the name of the chipsets, but this one is a Haswell chipset, 4590. Does work, not natively used by Apple, but that isn't a problem in itself. The machine I got had 4 GB of RAM, an Intel i5 4590, which is a quad-core chip, a 500 gig hard drive, and it also came with a monitor, keyboard and mouse. So all of that cost a mere £70. So throw into that a solid state drive. We just went through a 120 gig solid state drive from Amazon, and not a specific name, it wasn't a Samsung or anything like that. 23 quid, and pretty much we're in business for under £100, including a screen. Now, there's been a couple of things he's had to buy. Mac OS doesn't support VGA, which the monitor was that came with the system, so he's had to buy an adapter. And rather than messing around trying to get sound working, I always find it's easier just to throw a USB sound card in the back, which is like 2-3 quid. So overall, I think the total cost we worked out was about £110 that the machine has cost to build and get up and running. So first things first, go out and find your machine. You can build custom. You can, get your own board, chip, cooler, RAM, all that, and put it in a case yourself if you want to. I enjoy doing that, so that's how I do mine. Or if you're trying to keep the cost down, just get up and running quickly, go for something that is a workstation computer. So the reason this Dell was so cheap in my mind is that it's an optiplex 720 workstation. It hasn't got the word gaming or anything like that in there, so it's devalued quite quickly. Now, if I took all of the components out of that chassis that it's in, the optiplex case, and put it into a Fantex case or a BitPhoenix case, it'd be worth £200, maybe even £300, because people are just paying that for a gaming machine. Throw a graphics card in it and away you go. So you can quite often find these HP Elite Desk, I think they're called, or the Dell optiplex machines. I think the 790 works as well. They're the slightly earlier i5s, i7s and i3s. You can find them quite cheap on eBay and on Facebook, and actually for what they are is underrated, is what they are in my mind. So they work really, really well, picked them up really, really cheap. So that's what we went with. Added a couple of parts to beef it up. In the future we'll probably stick more RAM in it, we'll probably put a better graphics card in there, because at the moment we're using on board. But this machine is mainly going to be used for browsing the net, doing a bit of video editing, photo editing here and there. Nothing too strenuous at this point. Now, that's where going for something like this, quite cheap, is great, because you can just say, well, I'll see how I get along with it. Not had a massive outlay. If you do start doing a bit more with it, you've got the option to upgrade the RAM. The board will support up to 32 gig. Upgrade the processor. You could go up to a 4790K if you wanted to. Put a graphics card in there. It's PCIe graphics, so you could go for a GTX 1080 Ti or even an RTX when they come out. Not sure how well that would work, but you could do that. You could go for the AMD Vega cards. So again, you've got lots of options there for future upgradability. We just wanted to start off nice and cheap, which it has done, and it's worked. So first point, I would say research, making sure the hardware you're going to buy is going to work compatibly, isn't going to cause you issues. The way to do that research is, you're not going to find loads of answers on Amazon from reviews as to whether it works with Hackintosh. It's quite a niche thing. So the website you need is TonyMacX86.com. And if you go on there and onto the forums, there are guides from people that have done installs themselves and have gone through the start to finish process and got it all working. If you've got the right hardware to follow one of those guides step by step, then in my mind, why wouldn't you? Everything's done for you. These people have done a lot of the hard work, so that's one of the things to look for. And unfortunately with this one, there was one guide on Tony X86 which I used, which got everything working. I'll come to it in more detail later on, but it's a slightly newer machine than I was originally going to buy, and if I'd have gone for the optiplex 790, I think that would have worked with everything out of the box. But there were a couple of things that had to do quite a bit of work with this 7020. But fountain of knowledge is Tony Mac X86. Great bunch over there. They'll answer any questions that you've got. But try and find a guide that matches your hardware, or if you're building or buying a machine, try and find one that you're going to buy that has that hardware, so you've got a guide to follow. And it's a hell of a lot easier than it used to be 5, 6, 7 years ago when I first started doing it now. A lot of tools out there. So that's where you need to go. So TonyMacX86.com. That has all the tools for creating the installer. And that's what I'll show you in the next part of the video. Okay, so here we are on the Tony Mac X86 website. So I thought rather than showing you my ugly mug and talking you through this, it'd be easier just to show you the actual website that is available to you. So you've got the web address, and this can get you started. So first place I would go if you're thinking of looking at a custom build, looking at buying the parts and building something yourself, have a look at the buyer's guide. Now, what I would say with this is that this is updated on a monthly basis, this buyer's guide. So if you said, you wanted the custom Mac Pro, you can go for the 370 chipsets, which are the latest boards, i7-8700s, which are, I think the 8-core processors, so 8th generation, not sure how many cores they are anymore, but 6 cores that one is. That's £350. So you have to kind of, when you're looking at building these, work out, what are you going to be doing? Is it going to be that intensive that it needs something like a 6-core processor, or would an i5 or even an i3 be sufficient? The i3s now, the new ones, are quad core. So you look at that one, it's 150 quid, it's a quad core processor. The i5 there, same generation, it's £200. That's a 6-core processor. Now what you find with the i5 and the i7, the difference is the number of threads. So the i5 is a 6-core processor, but it will probably only have 6 threads because they normally match. Whereas the i7 will be a 6-core processor with 12 threads. So that's the difference. So you've got to work out, what are you going to be doing? If this is a machine you're thinking, I'm just going to browse the net, I'm just going to message my friends, just going to be on Facebook, Amazon, buying, shopping, you don't need anything like even an i5. You could probably get away with an i3 quad-core processor. So have a look on these. Now, what I would say is that if you're looking at going, I want to save a bit of money, I don't want to go high end and put all the latest and greatest stuff in there, like 1070 graphics cards and SSDs and things like that. If you look on Google, if you Google sort of the buying guide, you can find older versions of the buying guide. You can find those on this website if you look back for previous months. So don't be worried that you've got to buy the latest and greatest on here, because you haven't. Okay, so there are earlier buyer's guides that will use older stuff. You can see here, building custom Mac Intel generation, they're the boards recommended, but for older stuff you can keep going back. So there are other options there, but that's a good place to start when you're trying to find the hardware you want. So installation guide, this is the same whatever machine you're using, to be honest, and the latest version that we are on at the moment is High Sierra. Now today is September the 7th, 8th, September the 8th, and this is a High Sierra guide. High Sierra has been out for nearly a year. There is the next big announcements from Apple, which I think is penciled in for the 12th of September, and we're expecting new Apple Watches, new iPhones, probably an update to some of the Mac stuff potentially, to newer chips and things. But what we will be expecting is a release of OS Mojave, which is the next version of Mac OS. So this guide will invariably be out of date quite quickly after I've released it, because if you're going to be doing this, you're probably going to want to be putting on the latest version of Mac OS, so you're going to be looking at wanting to put Mojave on there. So no doubt Tony Mac and this website will be updated when Mojave's out there. I think actually there is already guides for Mojave, but it's in beta at the moment, so I don't tend to mess around with that. I wait for the Golden Master release or the final release to come out before I play around with it. So here you will see the table of contents and the different steps that you'll need to follow. I'm not going to go through them because they are quite easy to read. The one thing that you do need to be aware of to do this, you will need a functioning Mac. So the first time that I built a Hackintosh was, oh Christ, way back when in 2011 I think it was, and it was running Mac OS X, it was called then, and it was 10.6 Snow Leopard. You didn't need to have a Mac up and running at that point, because if you remember back in 2011 it was all on optical drives, so you could just download things and put them on CD. Obviously it's now on USB, and you're writing the software, writing bootloaders, so you need to have a working version of Mac OS. Now that either means that you've already got a Hackintosh up and running, in which case you're probably not watching this video anyway, because you probably know what you need to do more effectively than I'm telling you. Or B, you might have a Mac, or you might be able to lay your hands on a Mac to do the following. So it's a case of downloading the OS from the Mac Store, which will come into your applications, and then creating the USB bootloader with UniBeast. You need really a 16 gig stick or larger, and that will create your bootable drive. And then before you start trying to boot anything, have a look in the BIOS settings, make sure there's no things set in there that will stop it from booting. So some of the newer UEFI BIOSes have CRM security stuff, and it is defaulted to expect you to install Windows, and if you're trying to install something that isn't Windows, that can cause problems, so you need to disable that. So have a look at the recommended BIOS settings, then go through the install, and then it's a case of post installation with MultiBeast, okay, which is a utility that installs all of your well, in Apple they're called KECTs. You will know them from Windows as drivers effectively, and then that will get you up and running. And then you've got the troubleshooting, which will happen. You know, this is putting something essentially on a computer that shouldn't be there, so it's never going to run perfectly without coming into some snags, unless you happen to be doing the same sort of hardware over and over again, and you've done it and you know exactly how you do it. So expect a few problems along the way. I personally think that's part of the fun and part of the challenge of it. So you can just follow through this guide here, okay? That'll take you right the way through what you're doing to get you up and running. It'll even show you how to do it without converting to APFS, which is the new Apple file system. And yeah, follow that through, and hopefully that will get you to the point where you will have a bootable Hackintosh that's fully up and running. Okay, so that's the guide. Like I say, you will come across troubleshooting. So let me run through a couple of things I came up against with this particular system, this optiplex 7020. So this was a clean install. So there was no Mac OS on there previously. There was Windows on the hard drive, which I wiped, but there was nothing else on there. The first install I tried to do was with the latest version of Mac OS, 10.13.6, Mac OS High Sierra. It's probably the last release of High Sierra, and maybe one more update prior to Mojave coming out, but it was the latest. It's the latest release, and installing that onto a clean hard drive meant that it forced me to use Apple's new file system that is for SSDs, which is called APFS. Now, the problem is with this file system is that there's very little known about it outside of genuine Macs as to how it works and how effective it works. And the risk with any of this is if a code changes within an update, that can render everything undone, or all the hard work undone. So the guides sort of tell you use HFSS Plus, which is the older version of the file system. The only way I was able to get that to work was to install the year before's version of macOS, which is macOS Sierra version 10.12. That worked beautifully, and when I say it worked beautifully, I had sleep working, wake, all the i stuff, the message, FaceTime, App Store, iTunes, iCloud, everything was working perfectly. For all intents and purposes, other than seeing a Dell logo when you turn the machine on, it looked and felt like an Apple Mac. And you know, he's going to get a genuine Apple keyboard and mouse, and that will make it feel even more like that. But like any software, you really want to be running the latest version your machine will support, because that way you've got all the security updates and you've got all the latest features. So once I'd installed Sierra and got that working, you then want to upgrade to High Sierra. Again, as I said earlier, the latest version. The reason I wanted to do it as an update rather than as a clean install is if you input a line of code into Terminal within macOS, it will install High Sierra without converting the file system to APFS. It will leave it at HFSS Plus. And on the website I was showing you earlier, I think one of the things in that list of troubleshooting at the bottom was how to stay away from APFS. Now APFS may be fine, may not have any issues. We may end up going down that route in the future, but at this point I just felt a little bit unknown. If it was going to be staying with me and was going to be here, this machine, in case there were any problems, I might have gone down that route and tested it for a bit, but as it's not, I wanted to play it safe and go to back to the HFSS Plus, which I did by doing an update rather than a clean install. So what that did, unfortunately, was rendered sleep unusable. So when you normally put a machine to sleep, it goes quiet, all the fans stop spinning, goes silent. Effectively, you don't know it's in sleep mode apart from a blinking LED on the case. Well, as soon as you woke this one up, once it was on High Sierra, instead of it just going back to the password screen and booting in, it restarted and then reloaded up. Now in itself not a major problem, because it boots in under 30 seconds, so it's a relatively quick boot time compared to an old spinning disk system. But it should wake from sleep in a second or maybe two. So not ideal. Haven't been able to sort that out. I've got a post up on the forum to see if anyone else has figured that out, and if they have, I'll put the fix in place. But this is part of the thing with it, and this is part of the sort of caveat that I'd give anyone doing this is, if you rely on your machine, you can't afford for your machine to go down and leave you without a working system. Don't do this, because you can't guarantee it will not go down. Now, you can't guarantee a Windows machine won't go down, but if it does, because it's designed to be on that system, you've got a much better chance of getting it back up and running without losing any data. So if there's going to be critical stuff on the machine, stick with Windows. If you are either going to have all your stuff on other drives like I do, or if your if you don't use your computer for things that are critical, enjoy, have a bit of fun, and learn how to do it. I've got some genuine Macs, I've got iPads, I've got iPhones. I love the ecosystem of Apple, and for me, having that ecosystem, having everything work together is what I want my computers to do. I don't want one computer to work on Windows, go on the internet, I can pick up, start a document on there, and then if I want to continue it on the iPad, have to email it to myself or use OneDrive or a third-party piece of software. And that is kind of the beauty of the Apple ecosystem, in my opinion, is that I can start reading a document on the iPhone, and if I want the bigger screen on the iPad or the MacBook or the desktop, the icon's there saying what is open on the iPhone, click it and up it comes. If I start writing an email that turns into a bit of an essay that I want to to have a proper keyboard on, again, I can pick that up on the Mac. So it all integrates together perfectly, and for me, I love that ecosystem. Other people don't, it's not for them. That's fine. We all like different things. If we all like the same thing, the world would be a boring place. But for me, I really enjoyed the project of making this work, of making Hackintosh work. I really like using the Apple ecosystem, and yeah, have fun with it, learn with it. It's a good project, but the one call out I would say is, if your computer is your only computer, and if it is critical that it is working at all times, probably wouldn't do it. This one probably took me a day and a half to 2 days, because of some of the problems it was throwing at me were new and unknown things that I'd not come across before. I remember when I built my first Hackintosh in 2011, I think it probably took me 5 days to get everything working as it should. I've still got that hack, but it's gone through different iterations and updates, and now got SSDs and things like that in there. But yeah, I think for me, good fun project. But if you're reliant on your computer, and if it's the only computer that you've got, probably wouldn't do it. But yeah, if you've got any questions, please ask in the comments, and if I can, I'll answer them. If you like the video, if you want to see more, please subscribe. If you've got any feedback on how you want me to do things differently, let me know. Let me know what you thought to the new intro. I've just made that first attempt, so be a bit gentle, because I've never used After Effects before and it's a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, let me know what you think. Cheers guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.